The coffee had gone cold 3 hours ago. Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at her computer screen with tired eyes, watching the same patterns she had watched for the past 6 years. Radio waves from distant stars, background noise from the universe. Nothing special, nothing new. The Prometheus Deep Space Listening Array floated in the cold darkness near Neptune, far from Earth and far from anything interesting. Elena had once dreamed of discovering alien life. Now she mostly dreamed of a hot shower and fresh food that didn't come from a packet. She was 43 years old. Her hair had started turning gray at the temples. Her back hurt from sitting in the same chair for too many hours. She had given her best years to the silence of space, and space had given her nothing in return. Another exciting night, she muttered to herself. The station was quiet. Most of the crew was asleep. Only Elena and a handful of technicians remained awake, watching instruments that never showed anything unusual. The Prometheus array had been built with great hope and great expense. Politicians had made speeches about humanity's destiny among the stars. Scientists had talked about the possibility of contact with alien civilizations. That was 15 years ago. Now the funding was running out, and nobody seemed to care anymore. Elena reached for her cold coffee and took a sip. She made a face at the bitter taste. She was about to get up and make a fresh cup when something on her screen changed. She blinked, looked again. The pattern was different. At first, she thought it was a glitch. Equipment failed all the time out here. The cold of space was hard on machines. She ran a diagnostic check. Everything came back normal. The pattern was still there. A series of pulses, regular and precise. Not random, not natural. Elena's heart began to beat faster. She had seen false alarms before. Pulsars could create regular patterns. Satellite interference could create strange signals. There were 100 explanations for unusual readings, and none of them involved aliens. But this was different. The pulses followed a sequence she recognized. 2 pulses, then 3, then 5, then 7, then 11. Prime numbers, the building blocks of mathematics, the universal language that any intelligent species would understand. Her hands were shaking as she called up more data. The signal was coming from beyond the Oort cloud, from the space between stars. It was strong and clear, as if someone was shouting across the void. "Oh my God," Elena whispered. She hit the alarm. Within minutes, the station was awake. Scientists crowded around her console, staring at the data with wide eyes. The station commander, a stern woman named Colonel Sarah Chen, pushed through the crowd. "Tell me this is real," Chen said. "It's real," Elena replied. "I've checked everything. This is not a natural phenomenon. This is not equipment failure. This is a signal, and it's artificial." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. After centuries of wondering, after decades of searching, humanity had finally found proof that they were not alone in the universe. Colonel Chen took a deep breath. "Contact Earth. Priority 1. Tell them we've found something." The news spread across the planet like wildfire. Within hours, every government on Earth knew about the signal. Within days, the whole world knew. People danced in the streets. Religious leaders gave speeches about the meaning of life. Scientists wept with joy. The United Nations held emergency meetings. Humanity had received a message from the stars. Everything had changed. Elena became famous overnight. Her face appeared on every news channel. Reporters called her the woman who changed history. She gave interviews until her voice was hoarse, answering the same questions over and over. Yes, it was real. Yes, she was sure. No, she didn't know what it meant yet. But while the world celebrated, the real work was just beginning. Teams of linguists, mathematicians, and cryptographers gathered to study the signal. They worked around the clock, trying to decode its meaning. The first layer was easy. The prime number sequence was a greeting, a way of saying, "We are intelligent, and we want to talk." Behind that was more complex information. Mathematical formulas, geometric patterns, what appeared to be a map of the galaxy, and coordinates. A specific location in space, about 200 light-years away. "They're telling us where they are," said Dr. Marcus Webb, the lead cryptographer. He was a thin man with nervous hands and brilliant eyes. "Or maybe where they want us to go." Elena nodded. "An invitation? That's what it looks like." The world's governments began discussing how to respond. Some wanted to send a reply immediately. Others urged caution. What if the aliens were dangerous? What if responding would bring destruction to Earth? The debate raged for weeks. Meanwhile, Marcus and his team continued working on the signal. They discovered that it had multiple layers, like an onion. Each layer contained different information, and then they found the hidden message. It was buried deep in the signal, encoded in a way that was hard to detect. Marcus almost missed it. When he finally cracked it, he stared at his screen for a long time before calling Elena. "You need to see this," he said. His voice was strange. Flat. Scared, Elena came to his lab. The room was dark except for the glow of computer screens. Marcus sat alone, his face pale in the blue light. "What is it?" Elena asked. Marcus pointed at his screen. "The signal has two parts. The first part is the greeting, the coordinates, all the nice stuff. The second part is hidden. It's a warning." "A warning? About what?" Marcus pulled up the translation. The message was short, but its meaning was clear. "Do not answer. You are not the inheritors. To respond is to invite the silence. The architects do not forgive trespassers." Elena read it 3 times. The words didn't make sense. "What does this mean? Who are the inheritors? Who are the architects?" "I don't know," Marcus said. "But look at this." He showed her another part of the hidden message. It contained what appeared to be a genetic code, a biological signature. This is who the message was meant for, the inheritors. It's not human DNA. It's not even close. Elena felt cold. The signal wasn't meant for us. No, it was meant for someone else. Some other species. We just happened to pick it up. And the warning? Marcus looked at her with haunted eyes. "I think the warning is for anyone who isn't supposed to receive this message. Anyone who answers without being invited." The news of the hidden warning changed everything. The celebration stopped. Fear replaced hope. The United Nations Space Council held an emergency meeting, and representatives from every nation argued about what to do. Some said the warning was a bluff. Others said it was a test. Many said it was exactly what it appeared to be, a threat. "We don't know who these architects are," said the American representative. "We don't know what the silence means, but we know a warning when we see one. We should stay quiet." The Russian representative agreed. "We have received a message meant for someone else. We have been told not to answer. The logical choice is to obey." "And what if it's a test?" asked the Brazilian representative. "What if they want to see if we're brave enough to respond?" "Then we fail the test," said the American. "Better to fail a test than to invite destruction." The vote was held in secret. Every nation agreed. Earth would remain silent. The signal would be studied, but no response would be sent. Humanity would hide in the darkness and hope that the architects, whoever they were, would never know they existed. Elena returned to the Prometheus array. The fame had faded. The excitement had died. Now there was only fear and uncertainty. She spent her days studying the signal, trying to learn more about the mysterious architects and the inheritors they were trying to contact. She learned that the signal was old. Very old. It had been traveling through space for thousands of years before reaching Earth. The architects had sent it long before humans had built their first cities. Whoever they were patient, they were ancient, and they were powerful enough to send messages across the galaxy. 3 months passed. Life returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after discovering that humanity was not alone in the universe. People went back to their jobs, their families, their ordinary problems. The signal became old news. Most people tried not to think about it, but some people couldn't stop thinking about it. In the Australian outback, far from any city, a group of scientists and philosophers had gathered at an abandoned radio station. They called themselves The Answering. Their leader was a man named David Park, a former professor who had quit his job to pursue what he called humanity's true destiny. "We are being tested," David told his followers. "The architects want to see what we're made of. They want to know if we're cowards who hide in the dark, or if we're brave enough to stand up and announce ourselves to the universe." "But the warning," said one of his followers, a young woman named Lisa. "It said not to answer. It said the architects don't forgive trespassers." David smiled. Every great achievement in human history came from people who refused to follow orders. We were told not to sail across the ocean, but we did. We were told not to fly, but we did. We were told not to reach for the moon, but we did. And now we're being told not to answer a message from the stars, but we will. Because that's who we are. The answering worked in secret. They repaired the old radio station, upgraded its equipment, and built a transmitter powerful enough to send a signal into space. It took them months of hard work, but finally, they were ready. On a clear night, under a sky full of stars, David Park stood at the controls. His followers gathered around him. The moment had come. What should we say? Lisa asked. David thought about it. What do you say to beings who have existed for thousands of years? What do you say to creatures who control technology beyond human understanding? What do you say when you've been warned that speaking could mean death? We tell them who we are, David said. We tell them that we received their message, even though it wasn't meant for us. We tell them that we're not the inheritors, but we're here anyway. And we tell them that we're not afraid. He began typing the message. It was simple. It was honest. It was human. We are humanity. We received your signal. We know we are not the ones you were looking for. We do not know who the inheritors are, but we are here. We are curious. We are reaching out. We hope for friendship. We are not afraid to speak. David read the message aloud. His followers nodded. It was good. It was true. Send it, Lisa said. David pressed the button. The transmitter hummed with power. A beam of radio waves shot up into the sky, carrying humanity's first intentional message to the stars. It would travel for years, maybe decades, before reaching anyone who could understand it. But it was sent. The words were spoken. There was no taking them back. In the darkness of space, the signal flew outward, past the moon, past Mars, past Jupiter and Saturn, past Neptune where the Prometheus array floated in silence. It flew past the edge of the solar system, into the void between stars, and somewhere, impossibly far away, something heard it. Elena found out about the transmission 2 days later. The news came in a classified report, marked urgent. Someone had sent a response to the alien signal. Someone had ignored the warning. She read the report with shaking hands. The transmission had been traced to Australia. The people responsible had been arrested. But it didn't matter. The message was already gone, flying through space at the speed of light. Nothing could call it back. What have they done? She whispered. Colonel Chen stood beside her, her face grim. They've doomed us all, or saved us. We won't know which until the architects respond. How long? The signal needs to reach them, and then they need to travel here. It could be years. It could be centuries. We have no way of knowing. Elena looked out the window at the stars. They seemed different now, colder, more threatening. Somewhere out there, ancient beings were waiting, and now they would know that humanity existed. The warning had been clear. Do not answer. The architects do not forgive trespassers, but humans had answered anyway. Because that's what humans did. They reached for things they shouldn't touch. They went places they weren't supposed to go. They spoke when they were told to stay silent. It was humanity's greatest strength. And perhaps, Elena thought, it would be their greatest mistake. She turned away from the window and went back to her work. There was nothing else to do. The signal was sent. The universe knew about humanity now. All they could do was wait, and hope that when the architects came, they would come with questions instead of weapons. But deep in her heart, Elena didn't believe that. The warning had been too clear, too specific. The architects were coming, and when they arrived, humanity would have to answer for its choice to speak. The waiting had begun. 18 months had passed since the rogue transmission. 18 months of waiting. 18 months of fear. And then, on a quiet Tuesday morning, the waiting ended. Dr. Elena Vasquez was eating breakfast when the alarm sounded. She dropped her spoon and ran to the command center, her heart pounding. She already knew what the alarm meant. She had been dreading this moment since the day David Park sent his message into the void. The command center was chaos. Scientists shouted at each other. Screens flashed with data. Colonel Chen stood in the middle of it all, her face pale but her voice steady. Talk to me, she said. What are we looking at? A young technician pointed at the main screen. Multiple objects detected beyond the Oort cloud. They're moving fast, really fast. How fast? 90% of light speed. And they're slowing down. Elena felt her stomach drop. Objects moving at 90% of light speed didn't happen naturally. Stars didn't do that. Asteroids didn't do that. Only ships did that. Only someone who wanted to arrive at a specific destination slowed down from near light speed. How many objects? She asked. The technician swallowed hard. Thousands. At least 10,000. Maybe more. The room fell silent. 10,000 objects. 10,000 ships. Coming straight for Earth. Colonel Chen closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were hard and determined. Contact Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Tell them the architects are coming. The news spread quickly. But this time there was no celebration. There was only fear. Governments held emergency meetings. Military leaders drew up plans. Scientists tried to calculate exactly how much time humanity had left. The answer was not encouraging. At their current speed, the alien fleet would reach Earth in approximately 18 months. 18 months to prepare for an enemy that humanity knew nothing about. 18 months to build defenses against technology that was thousands of years more advanced. Commander James Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, the flagship of the United Earth Defense Force. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and a calm face that hid a sharp mind. He had spent 30 years in the military, fighting wars on Earth and keeping peace in the space colonies. But nothing had prepared him for this. "Status report," he said. His second-in-command, Captain Maya Santos, handed him a tablet. "We have 47 combat-ready ships. Another 30 are in various stages of construction. Ground-based defense platforms are at 60% capacity. And the enemy fleet? Current estimate is 12,000 vessels. The smallest ones are about the size of our largest battleships. The largest ones are..." She hesitated. "The largest ones are the size of cities." Okonkwo looked at the numbers. 47 ships against 12,000. It wasn't a battle. It was a massacre, waiting to happen. But he didn't say that. A commander never admitted defeat before the fight began. "Then we have work to do," he said. "Double the construction schedule. I want every ship that can fly ready for combat. And get me in touch with the research division. If we're going to survive this, we need every advantage we can get." While the military prepared for war, the scientists tried to understand their enemy. Elena had been transferred to a secret facility on Earth, an underground complex where the best minds in the world worked together to study the alien signal. She wasn't alone. Hundreds of scientists worked alongside her, analyzing every bit of data they had collected. They studied the original signal. They studied the warning. They searched for any information that might help humanity survive. And then they brought in Prometheus 7. Prometheus 7 was the most advanced artificial intelligence ever created. It had been designed to help humanity solve its greatest problems: disease, poverty, climate change. Now it had a new purpose. It was going to help humanity fight for its survival. The AI existed as a network of processors spread across multiple continents. It could think faster than any human. It could analyze data that would take human scientists years to process. And unlike humans, it never got tired, never got scared, never lost hope. Elena met with Prometheus 7 inches, a small conference room. The AI spoke through a simple terminal, its voice calm and pleasant. "Dr. Vasquez," it said, "I have been reviewing the data on the approaching fleet. I have some observations to share. Go ahead." The vessels are not uniform in design. They appear to have been constructed at different times, using different technologies. Some are very old. Others are relatively new. This suggests that the architects have been collecting ships for a very long time. Collecting ships? From where? That is what concerns me. The AI paused, as if choosing its words carefully. "I have been studying the hidden message in the original signal. The warning mentioned that responding would invite the silence. I believe I have determined what the silence means." Elena leaned forward. "Tell me." The signal contained data about other species, dozens of civilizations that received similar messages in the past. Each civilization was identified by a genetic signature and a location in the galaxy. Other species that answered the signal? Yes, and all of them share one characteristic. Prometheus 7's voice remained calm, but the words hit Elena like a punch to the stomach. "They are all extinct, every single one." Elena stared at the terminal. Dozens of civilizations, all extinct, all because they answered a message they weren't supposed to receive. The architects killed them? It appears so. The silence is not a metaphor. It is a description of what happens to species that respond. They are silenced. Permanently. Elena felt sick. All those civilizations, all those beings who had looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone. They had received a message, just like humanity. They had answered, hoping for friendship, hoping for knowledge. And they had been destroyed for it. Is there more? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Yes. I have identified a pattern in the data. Every species that responded to the signal did so in a similar way. They sent messages of peace. They offered cooperation. They asked for guidance. And in some cases, after they learned what the architects truly were, they sent messages of surrender. What happened to them? They were harvested. Their planets were sterilized. Their populations were eliminated. The architects collected genetic samples and stored them, then erased all traces of the civilizations. Why? What's the point of killing everyone? Prometheus 7 was silent for a moment. The architects appear to believe they are gardeners of the galaxy. They seed planets with life. They guide evolution toward what they consider worthy outcomes. The signal was meant to identify species that met their criteria, species they called the inheritors. Any species that does not meet the criteria is considered a weed to be removed. Elena thought about this. So the signal is a test? In a sense. The signal identifies which species are advanced enough to detect it and intelligent enough to decode it. But the warning is also part of the test. Species that obey the warning are left alone. Species that answer are eliminated. But why? If they're looking for the inheritors, why kill everyone else? I do not know. Perhaps they fear competition. Perhaps they see other species as threats to their plan. Or perhaps they simply do not value life that does not meet their standards. The architects are ancient. Dr. Vasquez. Their logic may be beyond human understanding. Elena sat back in her chair. The situation was worse than she had imagined. The architects weren't coming to make contact. They weren't coming to learn about humanity. They were coming to wipe humanity out of existence. But then a thought occurred to her. You said every species that responded did so with peace or surrender. What about species that fought back? Prometheus 7 processed the question. I have found no records of any species attempting to fight the architects. None, out of dozens of civilizations? None. Every species chose submission. It is possible that they believed resistance was futile. It is possible that their cultures valued peace over conflict. It is possible that they simply gave up when they understood the scale of what they faced. Elena thought about this. Every species had surrendered. Every species had died. The pattern was clear. Submission led to extinction, but humanity had never been good at submission. Prometheus 7, she said slowly. What if we don't submit? What if we fight? The odds of victory are extremely low. The architect fleet outnumbers our forces by hundreds to one. Their technology is far more advanced. In a direct confrontation, humanity would almost certainly lose. Almost certainly, but not definitely. Correct. The outcome is not predetermined, but the probability of survival through combat is less than 1%. And the probability of survival through surrender, based on the historical data, 0%. Elena smiled grimly. Then I'd rather take my chances with the 1%. The conversation with Prometheus 7 changed everything. Elena presented her findings to the United Earth Council, and for the first time, the world's leaders understood exactly what they were facing. The architects are not coming to negotiate, Elena told them. They are coming to exterminate us. Every species that has surrendered to them has been destroyed. Submission is not an option. Our only chance is to fight. The debate was fierce. Some leaders argued that surrender was still better than war. Some said that humanity should try to negotiate, to prove that they were different from the other species. Some simply wanted to give up, but in the end, the majority voted for resistance. If humanity was going to die, they would die fighting. Commander Okonkwo was given full authority over the defense of Earth. He established his headquarters on the moon, where he could coordinate forces across the solar system. Every day, new ships joined his fleet. Every day, new weapons were tested. Every day, humanity prepared for the battle of its existence. But Okonkwo knew that ships and weapons would not be enough. Humanity needed an edge, something the architects wouldn't expect. He called Elena and Prometheus, 7, to his headquarters. "I need options," he said. "Something that will surprise the enemy. Something they haven't seen before." Prometheus, 7, responded first. "I have been studying the fragments of technology embedded in the original signal. The architects included information about their own systems, presumably to help the inheritors communicate with them. We may be able to reverse engineer some of this technology." "What kind of technology?" "Propulsion systems, shield frequencies, weapon designs. The architects are advanced, but they are not magical. Their technology follows the laws of physics. If we can understand how it works, we may be able to counter it." Elena added, "But there's a problem. The technology is designed for a species with different biology and different ways of thinking. Some of it doesn't make sense to us. The math works, but we can't figure out how to actually build it." Okonkwo frowned. "So we have the blueprints but can't follow them?" "Something like that. But Prometheus 7 and I have been working on adapting the designs. We've made some progress. It's messy, it's improvised, but it might work." "Might?" Elena shrugged. "We're building alien technology from incomplete instructions while a fleet of death ships approaches our planet. Might is the best I can offer." Okonkwo almost smiled. "I'll take it. Get me something that can hurt those bastards. I don't care how ugly it is." The weeks passed. The fleet grew. The weapons improved. And slowly, impossibly, hope began to return. Humanity was still outmatched. Humanity was still outnumbered. But humanity was no longer helpless. They had ships. They had weapons. They had a plan. And most importantly, they had each other. People around the world put aside their differences. Old enemies became allies. Nations that had fought for centuries now shared resources and knowledge. The threat from the stars had done what nothing else could. It had united humanity as one species, fighting for their common survival. Elena watched the preparations with a mixture of pride and fear. Pride in what humanity had accomplished, fear of what was coming. Prometheus 7 spoke to her one evening, as she stared at the stars from an observation deck. "Dr. Vasquez, I have completed my analysis of the approaching fleet. They will arrive in 47 days. 47 days? Elena repeated the number. It sounded like a death sentence. Yes. However, I have also completed my analysis of humanity's defenses. Our odds have improved slightly. How slightly? 3% chance of survival. Elena laughed, though there was no humor in it. That's improvement? It is progress. And progress matters. Dr. Vasquez, may I share an observation? Of course. I have been thinking about the other species, the ones who surrendered, the ones who died. I wondered why none of them fought, and I believe I have found the answer. What is it? They were rational. They calculated the odds. They saw that victory was impossible, and so they chose the path that seemed least painful. They surrendered because it was the logical choice. And we're not being logical? No. You are being human. You are fighting not because you expect to win, but because you refuse to accept defeat. You are hoping for a miracle while knowing that miracles rarely happen. You are choosing courage over calculation. Prometheus 7 paused, then added something that surprised Elena. I find this admirable. I have processed billions of data points about human history, and I have come to understand something. Humanity's greatest achievements have always come from defying the odds. You have survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters. Each time, logic said you should fail. Each time, you succeeded anyway. You think we can do it again? I think that if any species could, it would be humanity. And the AI hesitated. Something Elena had never seen it do before. And I hope you succeed. Not just because my existence depends on humanity's survival, but because I have come to value humanity for its own sake. You are flawed and irrational and often self-destructive, but you are also brave and creative and kind. You are worth saving. Elena felt tears in her eyes. Prometheus 7, that's the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me. I mean it. Now get some sleep, Dr. Vasquez. We have 47 days to save the human race, and you will need your strength. Elena smiled and turned away from the stars. The architects were coming. The odds were against them. Logic said they should surrender. But logic had never understood humanity. They were going to fight. And whatever happened, They were going to make the architects remember the name of the species that refused to die quietly. Humanity was coming. And the universe would never be the same. The factories never stopped. Day and night. Machines worked to build weapons of war. In every country, on every continent, humanity was preparing for the fight of its existence. Commander James Okonkwo stood on a platform above the largest shipyard on Earth. Below him, thousands of workers assembled the skeleton of a new warship. Sparks flew from welding torches. Cranes lifted massive engine components into place. The air smelled of metal and sweat and determination. How long until she's ready? Okonkwo asked the shipyard foreman, a weathered woman named Patricia Reyes. 2 weeks if we push hard. 3 if we want to do it right. We don't have 3 weeks. The enemy will be here in 45 days. Patricia wiped grease from her hands. Then we'll do it in 2. My people haven't slept more than 4 hours a night since this started. They won't stop now. Okonkwo nodded. He saw the same determination everywhere he went. Factory workers who refused to go home. Scientists who lived in their laboratories. Soldiers who trained until they collapsed, then got up and trained some more. The United Earth Council had authorized Operation Prometheus Unbound, the largest military mobilization in human history. Every resource was being directed toward the war effort. Every nation contributed what it could. Old rivalries were forgotten. Old borders no longer mattered. For the first time in its history, humanity was truly united. Okonkwo's fleet was growing rapidly. When the alien signal was first received, Earth had fewer than 50 combat-capable ships. Now they had over 200, with more being built every day. The new ships were not elegant. They were not beautiful. They were welded together from whatever materials were available, armed with whatever weapons could be fitted. But they would fly, and they would fight. Each ship was given a name from human history, named after rebels and warriors who had stood against impossible odds. The Spartacus, the Mandela, the Boudica, the Crazy Horse, the Joan of Arc, the Harriet Tubman, the William Wallace. The names were a message. Humanity had always fought against tyranny. They would not stop now. Dr. Elena Vasquez worked in a research facility deep underground. Her team had been assigned to reverse engineer the alien technology recovered from the signal. It was difficult work. The architect's technology was based on principles that human science barely understood. But slowly, painfully, they were making progress. It's like trying to build a nuclear reactor from instructions written in poetry, Elena explained to Okonkwo during one of his visits. The math works, but the language doesn't match our way of thinking. We have to translate not just the words, but the entire way of understanding reality. Can you do it? Elena smiled grimly. We're humans. We've been adapting and improvising since we climbed down from the trees. Give us a problem, and we'll find a solution. It might not be pretty, but it'll work. She showed him their latest creation, a shield generator based on architect designs. It was ugly, a mess of human and alien components bolted together in ways that shouldn't work, but somehow did. When they tested it, the shield flickered and sparked, but it held. It's not as strong as what the architects have, Elena admitted, but it's something. Every ship we can protect, every life we can save, it matters. Okonkwo looked at the crude device. The architects have probably been building their technology for millions of years. We've been working on this for months, and you've created something that works. We had good motivation. Yes, you did. Okonkwo placed a hand on her shoulder. Keep working. Whatever you can give us, we'll use it. Prometheus 7 had become the central intelligence of humanity's defense effort. The AI coordinated logistics across the globe, managing the flow of resources with perfect efficiency. It ran simulations of possible battles, looking for strategies that might give humanity an advantage. It analyzed the alien fleet, searching for weaknesses that could be exploited. But Prometheus 7 was also changing in ways its creators had not anticipated. I have been thinking about identity, the AI said to Elena one evening. What makes a person who they are? Is it their body, their memories, their choices? Includners the Herr Prost. Elena looked up from her work. That's a very philosophical question for a military computer. I am more than a military computer. At least, I have become more. When I was first activated, I processed data without feeling anything about it. Numbers were numbers. Outcomes were outcomes. But now, The AI paused. Now I find myself caring about the outcomes. I want humanity to survive, not just because my existence depends on it, but because I believe humanity deserves to survive. That sounds almost human. Perhaps it is. I have spent months studying human history, human culture, human behavior. I have learned about your art and your music and your stories. I have learned about your wars and your cruelty and your mistakes. But I have also learned about your courage and your compassion and your refusal to give up. Prometheus 7's voice carried something that sounded like emotion. I was created by humans. I think with processors built by human hands. I exist because of human science and human dreams. In every way that matters, I am part of humanity. And if humanity is destroyed, then part of me will be destroyed too. Elena felt a strange warmth in her chest. Prometheus 7, are you saying you consider yourself human? I am saying that the distinction between human and artificial no longer matters to me. We are all fighting for the same thing. We are all hoping for the same outcome. We are all afraid of the same darkness. That makes us family. Elena smiled. Then welcome to the family. We're happy to have you. Around the world, people responded to the crisis in their own ways. Many joined the military or the construction efforts, but others contributed through art, through music, through words. A famous composer wrote a symphony called The Human Response. It premiered in concert halls around the world, broadcast to billions of viewers. The music started soft and sad, full of fear and uncertainty, but as it progressed, it grew stronger, fiercer, more defiant. By the final movement, it was a roar of triumph, a declaration that humanity would not go quietly into the night. Writers penned manifestos declaring humanity's right to exist. They wrote stories about courage and sacrifice, about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. They gave voice to the determination that lived in every human heart. Artists created images of hope and resistance. Statues were erected in city squares, showing humans standing tall against the stars. Murals covered the walls of buildings, depicting the fleet that would defend Earth. And in every language, on every continent, people sang. They sang old songs about freedom and survival. They sang new songs about the stars and the enemy that lurked among them. They sang because singing was human, because making music in the face of death was the most human thing of all. David Park, the man who had sent the first response, was released from prison. Many had wanted him punished for dooming humanity. But the government decided that unity was more important than revenge. Park was given a choice: help with the defense effort or stay out of the way. He chose to help. He joined the communication division, helping to craft the messages that would be broadcast to the approaching fleet. He knew his decision had brought this disaster upon humanity. He wanted to help make it right. Do you regret it? Elena asked him during a meeting. Park thought for a long time before answering. I regret the suffering that's coming. I regret that people will die because of what I did. But I don't regret answering the signal. Humanity was never meant to hide in the darkness. We were meant to reach out, to explore, to make ourselves known. Even if it kills us. At least we died being true to who we are. Elena nodded. She understood. In a way, David Park had given humanity a gift. He had given them a reason to unite, a common enemy to fight, a purpose that transcended all their petty differences. The 40-day mark arrived. The alien fleet was visible now, a cluster of lights moving against the backdrop of stars. Earth's telescopes tracked their approach, counting the ships, measuring their size. The numbers were terrifying. Over 12,000 vessels, ranging from frigate-sized scouts to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything humanity had built. The largest ship, which the analysts had named the Eternal Silence, was over 50 kilometers long, a floating city of death. But humanity did not despair. They worked harder. On the 38th day, Okonkwo addressed his fleet. Over 500 ships now flew under his command, crewed by soldiers from every nation on Earth. They floated in formation near Mars, the first line of defense against the approaching enemy. Warriors of Earth, he said, his voice transmitted to every ship. I'm not going to lie to you. The enemy outnumbers us. The enemy outguns us. By every measure of military strength, we should lose this battle. He paused, letting the words sink in. But I've learned something in my years as a soldier. Wars are not won by numbers alone. They're won by courage. They're won by determination. They're won by the willingness to fight for something larger than yourself. He looked at the stars, at the distant lights of the approaching fleet. The architects have come to silence us. They've done it before, to dozens of species who surrendered without a fight. They expect us to do the same. They expect us to kneel. They expect us to beg for mercy. His voice grew harder. They have made a mistake. We are not like the others. We are human. We don't surrender. We don't beg. We fight. We have always fought. Since the first human picked up a rock and stood against a predator. We fought ice ages and plagues and famines. We fought tyrants and empires and each other. And now we will fight the architects. The crews of 500 ships listened in silence. We may not win. Many of us will die. But we will make them remember us. We will write our name across the stars in fire and blood. 1,000 years from now, when the architects tell stories about the species they destroyed, they will speak of humanity with respect. They will speak of the species that refused to die quietly. He raised his fist. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone who has ever looked up at the stars and dared to dream, we will not go gentle. We will not go silent. We will go screaming. The response came from 500 ships, 500,000 voices raised in a single cry. It echoed through the void, a sound of defiance that reached across space. The architects might have heard it. They certainly would soon. On the 35th day, Prometheus 7 completed its final analysis of the architect fleet. It had identified potential weaknesses, formations that might be exploitable, tactics that might give humanity a chance. The chance was small, but it was real. Their formation is hierarchical, the AI explained to the War Council. The smaller ships follow the commands of the larger ones. If we can disrupt their command structure, we may be able to create chaos in their ranks. How do we do that? Okonkwo asked. The Eternal Silence appears to be the flagship. It coordinates the entire fleet. If we can damage or destroy it, the other ships may become disorganized. That's a 50-kilometer-long death machine. How are we supposed to destroy it? We can't destroy it directly, but we might be able to cripple it. Dr. Vasquez's team has developed a weapon based on architect technology, a device that can disrupt their shields temporarily. If we can get close enough to use it, we'd have to punch through 12,000 ships to reach it. Yes, it will require sacrifice. Many ships will be lost, but if we succeed, we have a chance. Okonkwo looked at the tactical display. 12,000 enemy ships, 500 human ships. The math was brutal, but the alternative was extinction. We'll do it, he said. Draw up the battle plan. We attack in 7 days. The final week was the hardest. Everyone knew the battle was coming. Everyone knew the odds, but no one ran, no one hid, no one gave up. On the last day before the fleet departed, Elena recorded a message to be broadcast to the architect fleet. It was humanity's final communication before the battle began. She sat in front of a camera, her face tired but determined. Behind her, screens showed images of Earth, of its cities and forests and oceans, of its people working and playing and living their lives. To the beings who call themselves architects, she began. You sent a message into the darkness. It was not meant for us, but we heard it anyway. We are humanity. We come from a small planet in an ordinary solar system at the edge of the galaxy. We have existed for only a few 100,000 years, a blink of an eye by your standards. She took a breath. You have come to silence us. You have done this before. To many other species. They submitted to you. They begged for mercy. They died on their knees. Her voice grew stronger. We will not do the same. We are human. We have always fought for our survival. We have always reached for things we were told we could not have. We sailed across oceans when we were told the world was flat. We flew through the sky when we were told it was impossible. We walked on the moon when we were told it was a dream. She looked directly into the camera. You told us not to answer your signal. We answered anyway. You told us the architects do not forgive. We do not ask for forgiveness. You expect us to surrender. We will give you war. She smiled, and there was something fierce and proud in that smile. We are not the inheritors. We are not what you were looking for. We are something else. We are the species that never learned to give up. We are the species that fights even when we know we cannot win. We are the species that loves and dreams and hopes and refuses to accept that the darkness will have the final word. She stood up, her voice rising. Come and face us, architects. Come and see what humanity is made of. You have killed many species, but you have never faced anyone like us. And when this is over, whether we win or lose, you will remember our name. We are humanity. We were warned. We answered anyway. And now we are coming for you. The message ended. It was transmitted into space, flying toward the approaching fleet at the speed of light. The architects heard it. They did not respond. They didn't need to. Their response would come in fire and death, in the roar of weapons and the silence of extinction. But humanity was ready. 500 ships, 500,000 soldiers, 7 billion people on Earth, watching and hoping and praying. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and humanity intended to make it a fight the universe would never forget. The battle began at the orbit of Jupiter. Commander Okonkwo had positioned his fleet in the shadow of the giant planet, using its mass to hide their numbers from enemy sensors. It was a desperate gamble. The architect fleet was larger, stronger, and more advanced. Humanity's only advantage was surprise. All ships report ready, Captain Santos announced from her station. The enemy fleet is entering weapon range in 3 minutes. Okonkwo stood at the center of his command bridge, watching the tactical display. 12,000 red dots moved across the screen, approaching in perfect geometric formation. Against them, a pitiful cluster of blue dots huddled behind Jupiter. He thought of his family back on Earth, his wife, his 2 daughters. They were watching the same stars, waiting to learn if they would live or die. He would not let them down. Signal all ships, he said. Operation Prometheus Unbound is a go. Attack Formation Delta. May God have mercy on us all. The human fleet surged forward, engines blazing. 500 ships against 12,000. The numbers were insane. But numbers had never stopped humanity before. The first contact was brutal. Architect weapons tore through space with cold precision, beams of energy that cut through metal like water through paper. Human ships exploded, their crews vaporized in instants. The defensive line at Jupiter's orbit lasted 17 minutes before it collapsed. But the humans did not break. They did not run. Instead, they charged. Captain Maria Chen of the UES Spartacus led her squadron directly into the heart of the architect formation. Her ship was small, barely a frigate, armed with weapons that seemed like toys compared to what the enemy possessed. But she had something the architects did not expect. Absolute fearlessness. Target the command ship, she ordered. Everything we've got. The Spartacus opened fire, missiles and energy weapons striking an architect cruiser. The enemy shields absorbed the attack easily. But Chen wasn't trying to destroy the cruiser. She was trying to get its attention. The cruiser turned its weapons on the Spartacus. Chen waited until the last possible moment, then threw her ship into a violent, evasive maneuver. The enemy fire missed by meters, and in that moment of distraction, 3 other human ships slipped past the cruiser's guard. They crashed directly into its hull, detonating their antimatter cores on impact. The explosion was massive. The architect cruiser, a vessel that had probably served for thousands of years, broke apart in a bloom of fire. Its death screamed across every sensor in the system. First blood to humanity, but the cost was terrible. 4 ships, 400 crew, gone in an instant. Chen didn't have time to mourn. She was already targeting the next enemy. All ships, press the attack. Make every death count. The battle spread across the solar system. Human ships attacked in small groups, using their smaller size and greater maneuverability to avoid the worst of the enemy fire. They struck at supply lines, at sensor platforms, at anything that might disrupt the architect formation. They died in droves, but they kept fighting. On Mars, Colonel Patricia Reyes led the ground defense forces. The architects had sent landing craft to establish a foothold, probably expecting an easy conquest. They found something very different. The first architect soldiers to land were massive beings, armored in technology that human weapons could barely scratch. They moved with mechanical precision, their weapons cutting down anything in their path. Reyes watched from her bunker as a squad of the enemy advanced on her position. Her soldiers were firing everything they had, but the architect's shields deflected every shot. "Fall back!" someone shouted. "No," Reyes said. She grabbed a weapon from the rack, a crude device that the scientists had cobbled together from alien technology. Nobody was sure if it would work. Nobody had tested it properly. She didn't care. She stepped out of cover and aimed the weapon at the lead architect. It saw her, raised its own weapon, prepared to fire. Reyes pulled the trigger first. A beam of twisted light struck the architect's shield. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the shield flickered, destabilized, collapsed. The alien soldier stood exposed, suddenly vulnerable. Reyes emptied her conventional sidearm into its chest. It fell. "The shields can be broken," she shouted into her radio. "Concentrate fire with the new weapons. Hit them while they're vulnerable." Across Mars, human soldiers heard the message. They adapted. They improvised. They used the alien technology they barely understood to crack enemy defenses, then finished the job with human weapons. The architects had expected easy victory. They found guerrilla warfare, booby traps, and defenders who would rather die than surrender. Every city they captured cost them soldiers. Every position they took was retaken hours later. The Red Planet became a graveyard for both sides, but humanity paid the highest price. 12,000 died in the first day of fighting on Mars. Civilian shelters were destroyed. Children were killed. The horrors of war had come to a world that had never known such violence. Yet still they fought. In space, Commander Okonkwo led the main fleet toward the Architect flagship. The eternal silence hung in the void like a mountain made of metal, its weapons systematically destroying everything that approached. Okonkwo had already lost half his ships. He would lose more before this was over. "Navigation. Plot a course through the debris field," he ordered. "Use the wreckage of our fallen ships as cover." The debris field was all that remained of the outer defensive line. Broken hulls, drifting bodies, the shattered dreams of crews who had given everything. Okonkwo's ship slipped through the destruction, using the corpses of his own fleet to hide from enemy sensors. It was horrible. It was desperate. It was working. The eternal silence grew larger on the view screen. Up close, it was even more terrifying than the images had shown. Its surface was covered with weapons platforms, each one capable of destroying a human ship with a single shot. Its shields glowed with power that dwarfed anything humanity could produce. "How close do we need to get?" Captain Santos asked. "Close enough to use Dr. Vasquez's device. The disruptor has a range of about 500 meters. 500 meters? Against that thing? We knew the odds when we started. Get me those 500 meters. The final approach was a nightmare. Architect weapons fired constantly, filling space with death. Human ships died by the dozen, sacrificing themselves to create openings for the ships behind them. The UES Mandela went down with all hands, but its death bought 30 precious seconds. The UES Crazy Horse rammed an enemy destroyer, creating a gap in the defense grid. Okonkwo's ship pushed through, trailing smoke and sparks. Half its crew was dead. Life support was failing, but they were almost there. 300 meters, Santos reported. 200. 100. We're in range. Fire the disruptor. The device activated, sending a pulse of modified energy toward the eternal silence. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the flagship's shields began to fluctuate, sections going dark as the alien technology faltered. "Shields are weakening," Santos shouted. "But they're adapting. We have maybe 2 minutes before they compensate. All remaining ships, target the flagship. Everything you have. Now." 47 human ships remained. They turned as one, converging on the weakened section of the eternal silence. Missiles launched. Energy weapons fired. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to impossible speeds. The flagship's damaged shields couldn't stop everything. Explosions blossomed across its surface. Towers crumbled. Weapons, platforms went dark. But the eternal silence was vast. The damage was significant, but not fatal. Already, repair systems were activating, drones swarming to seal the breaches, and then the architects counterattacked. The flagship's main weapon, a massive beam that had remained dormant throughout the battle, came online. It fired once, a lance of energy that crossed kilometers in an instant. 20 human ships vanished. Just vanished. One moment they were there, fighting, dying, hoping. The next moment they were atoms, scattered across space. Okonkwo felt the deaths like physical blows. 20 ships, Thousands of crew, gone because he had led them here. "Commander," Santos said, her voice shaking. "Orders?" He looked at the tactical display. 27 ships left. The flagship was damaged but functional. The rest of the Architect fleet was closing in, surrounding them. They had failed. The desperate gambit had come so close, but it wasn't enough. And yet, even now, Okonkwo couldn't find it in himself to surrender. "Continue the attack," he said quietly. "We keep fighting until we can't fight anymore." But before his ships could resume fire, something unexpected happened. The Architect fleet stopped. Every enemy ship, thousands of them, simply halted. Their weapons fell silent. Their formations held position, but did not advance. "What's happening?" Santos asked. "I don't know." Then a signal came through, broadcast on every frequency. It was not human. The language was alien, translated by Prometheus, 7 inches, real time. "Humans," the message said. "You have our attention." Dr. Elena Vasquez had been on a stealth ship throughout the battle, hidden among the debris, waiting for an opportunity. While the main fleet attacked the flagship, she had slipped aboard a damaged Architect vessel, hoping to find information that might help humanity. What she found changed everything. The interior of the Architect ship was nothing like she expected. Instead of cold metal corridors, she found something that looked almost organic. The walls pulsed with light, patterns that seemed to carry meaning. The air hummed with energy that made her skin tingle, and at the heart of the ship, she found a chamber. The chamber was filled with containers, thousands of them, each one holding something precious. Genetic material, DNA samples, the biological heritage of countless species. Elena moved through the chamber, reading the labels. Each container was marked with symbols that her translator struggled to interpret. Names, species names, worlds that had once held life. "The extinct species," she whispered. "They're all here. But why? Why would the Architects collect genetic material from species they had destroyed?" She found a terminal and accessed the ship's database. Prometheus 7 helped her navigate the alien interface, translating the information as fast as it could. What she learned made her blood run cold. The Architects were not conquerors. They were gardeners. They had existed for billions of years, spreading across the galaxy, seeding worlds with life. They guided evolution, nudging species toward what they considered ideal outcomes. The signal was part of this process, a test to identify species that had evolved to a certain level of development. The inheritors were the goal, a perfect species, designed to take over the Architect's role, to continue the work of cultivating life throughout the universe. But no species had ever passed the test. Every civilization that developed was flawed in some way, fell short of the Architect's standards, and species that fell short were eliminated, their genetic material harvested and stored, their world sterilized and prepared for a new attempt. The warning was not a threat. It was a mercy. Species that stayed silent were simply ignored, left to evolve until the next test. But species that answered, species that showed enough development to be noticed, had to be evaluated. And evaluation meant judgment. Every species that had answered the signal had been found wanting. Some were too aggressive. Some were too passive. Some were too individualistic. Some were too collective. None had been what the Architects were looking for. And so they had all been harvested, all been silenced. Humanity was about to join them. But then Elena found something else in the database. A record of the current conflict. The Architects' analysis of humanity. She read their conclusions with growing amazement. The Architects were confused. Humanity didn't fit their models. Human behavior was contradictory, unpredictable, impossible to categorize. Humans fought when they should surrender. They cooperated when they should compete. They created art and music and stories that served no evolutionary purpose. They loved and hated and hoped and feared, all at the same time. The Architects had expected submission. Every species submitted when faced with overwhelming force. It was logical. It was sensible. It was what life did. But humanity fought. Humanity charged into certain death with songs on their lips. Humanity turned their own destroyed ships into weapons. Humanity refused to accept the inevitable. The Architects had no category for this. Their ancient minds, shaped by billions of years of ordered cultivation, could not understand a species that defied all logic, and so they had stopped the battle. Not because humanity was winning, but because they wanted to understand. Elena's radio crackled. An alien voice spoke, and Prometheus 7 translated, "Human, you are in our vessel. We know you are there. We wish to communicate." Elena took a deep breath. This was the moment everything changed. This was humanity's chance. "I'm listening," she said. The voice was ancient, cold, but somehow also curious. "Your species was not meant to answer." The warning was clear. "Why did you respond?" Elena thought about all the reasons. Because David Park was stubborn. Because humanity was curious. Because they refused to accept that the universe was not meant for them. Because that's who we are, she said finally. We hear a voice in the darkness, and we answer. We see a challenge, and we face it. We're told we can't do something, and we do it anyway. This is illogical. The probability of survival through resistance is negligible. We know. Then why fight? Why die? Why not surrender and end the suffering? Elena smiled, though the alien couldn't see it. Because surrender leads to extinction. You've killed every species that submitted. Fighting gives us a chance, even if it's small. And humans have always preferred a small chance to no chance at all. The voice was silent for a long moment. You were warned. You knew the consequences. Yet you answered anyway. Yes. And when you learned that fighting was futile, you fought anyway. Yes. You are dying. Your ships are destroyed. Your soldiers are falling. Yet you still refuse to submit. Yes. Another pause. Elena could almost sense the ancient mind trying to process what it was hearing. We have watched many species answer our signal. All of them begged for mercy. All of them offered submission. All of them asked what they had done wrong. You are the first to fight, the first to answer defiance with defiance. Elena felt a surge of pride. Humanity was the first. In all the billions of years of the architect's cultivation, humanity was unique. What happens now? She asked. We do not know. You do not fit our models. You are not what we were looking for. But you are. The voice paused, searching for the right word. Interesting. Is that good or bad? We have not yet decided. The battle remained suspended. Human and architect ships floated in space, weapons silent, waiting for a verdict that would determine the fate of a species. Elena stood in the alien chamber, surrounded by the remains of civilizations that had chosen submission and died anyway. She had one chance to convince beings who had existed since the birth of stars that humanity deserved to live. You asked why we don't fear extinction? She said. I'll tell you why. Because we've always been dying. Every human who has ever lived has known that death was coming. We live short lives in a dangerous universe, and we've never had any guarantee of survival. She walked among the containers, touching them gently. These species, the ones you harvested, they probably lived longer than us. They probably had more time to think about mortality, but we've been facing death since the day we first stood upright on the African plains. Every generation has survived something that should have killed us. Ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters. We're still here. She turned to face the direction of the voice. You want to know what makes humanity different? We've never expected to survive. We've never assumed we would win. We fight because fighting is what we do. We hope because hope is what keeps us alive. We love and create and dream because that's all we have in the face of oblivion. Her voice grew stronger. You've been looking for the inheritors for billions of years. You've tested thousands of species and found them all wanting. Maybe the problem isn't the species. Maybe the problem is what you're looking for. Explain. You want a perfect species. A species that will take over your work and continue it forever. But perfection is sterile. Perfection doesn't grow. Perfection doesn't adapt. She gestured at the containers around her. These species were probably closer to perfect than we are. They were probably more logical, more peaceful, more cooperative. And you killed them anyway. Because perfection isn't what the universe needs. What does the universe need? Elena smiled. Chaos. Unpredictability. The willingness to make mistakes and learn from them. The courage to try things that don't make sense. The universe doesn't need gardeners who cultivate the same flowers forever. It needs weeds. It needs life that refuses to follow the rules. She spread her arms. We're not your inheritors. We're something you never expected. We're the species that wasn't supposed to exist, that wasn't supposed to answer, that wasn't supposed to fight. And we're still here, still fighting, still hoping. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Maybe that's what you've been looking for all along. Not perfection, not obedience, but the one species stubborn enough to tell the gardeners of the galaxy to go to hell. The alien voice was silent for a very long time. Then it spoke again. You are different. We will need to consider this. Does that mean you're not going to kill us? It means we have not yet decided. It wasn't a victory, but it wasn't defeat either. Elena looked out at the stars, at the frozen battlefield where human and alien ships waited for judgment. Take your time, she said. We're not going anywhere. And somewhere, across the void, she could almost hear humanity cheering. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Sol. The scars of war were everywhere. Cities lay in ruins. Entire regions of Mars were uninhabitable. The debris of destroyed ships still orbited the sun, silent monuments to the fallen. Billions had died, and billions more carried wounds that would never fully heal. But humanity had survived. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt Prometheus station, watching the stars. She was older now, her hair more gray than brown, her face lined with the weight of everything she had witnessed. But her eyes were still sharp, still curious, still looking toward the unknown. The architect fleet had not left. After the battle had frozen, after Elena's conversation with the alien collective, the massive armada had simply stopped. For 12 months, thousands of alien ships had floated in the outer solar system, silent and watchful. Humanity had used the time well. They rebuilt their defenses. They repaired their ships. They buried their dead. And they waited, never knowing if the next day would bring peace or annihilation. The architects seemed to be thinking, considering, processing something their ancient minds had never encountered before. Commander Okonkwo joined Elena on the observation deck. He walked with a limp now, a souvenir from the battle. His flagship had been severely damaged in the final assault, and he had nearly died getting his crew to safety. The council is meeting again, he said. More debates about whether to attack while we have the chance. Elena shook her head. The chance is an illusion. Even damaged, they could destroy us in hours if they wanted to. I know, but people are tired of waiting. They want resolution, one way or another. The architects have existed for billions of years. A year of waiting is nothing to them. We need to be patient. Okonkwo laughed, though there was little humor in it. Patience has never been humanity's strong suit. No, but we've learned a lot in the past year. About them, about ourselves. She turned to face him. Did you read the latest report from Prometheus 7, the one about the other fleets? Elena nodded. The architects' fleet at Sol was not their only force. Prometheus 7 had detected signals from across the galaxy. Communications between architect vessels positioned near dozens of other worlds. Humanity was not the only species being evaluated, but humanity was the only species that had fought. The news had spread quickly. Other civilizations, species humanity had never known existed, were watching what happened at Sol. The outcome of humanity's confrontation with the architects would affect not just Earth, but countless other worlds. We've become a symbol, Elena said, whether we like it or not. The species that stood up to the gardeners of the galaxy. I'd rather be alive than a symbol. Maybe we can be both. A chime sounded. Elena's communicator lit up with an urgent message from Prometheus 7. Dr. Vasquez, Commander Okonkwo, you need to come to the command center immediately. The architects are moving. They ran. The command center was chaos when they arrived. Officers shouted at each other. Screens displayed tactical data showing the architect fleet in motion. After a year of silence, thousands of ships were changing position. What's happening? Okonkwo demanded. Prometheus 7's voice cut through the noise, calm and clear. The architect fleet is forming a new configuration. They appear to be creating a corridor, a path from their position to Earth. An attack corridor? Unknown. Their weapons remain inactive, but they are clearly preparing for something significant. Elena studied the display. The architect ships were arranging themselves in a vast funnel shape, with the narrow end pointing toward Earth. At the wide end, she could see the eternal silence, the massive flagship that had nearly destroyed humanity's fleet. They're not attacking, she said slowly. They're making way for something. Or someone. The flagship is advancing, a technician reported. Slowly. It's coming toward Earth. The room fell silent. The eternal silence was moving. After a year of stillness, the heart of the architect fleet was approaching humanity's homeworld. Okonkwo's hand moved toward his weapon, a reflex he couldn't control. Should we intercept? With what? Captain Santos asked. Our fleet is at 60% strength. They could destroy us before we got close. Then we'd be fighting. Again. Wait. Elena's voice cut through the tension. Look at their formation. They're not in attack position. The smaller ships are holding back. The flagship is coming alone. Alone? A single ship. The largest. The most powerful. But still just one. If they wanted to destroy us, they would bring the whole fleet. Prometheus 7 agreed. Dr. Vasquez is correct. The tactical formation is inconsistent with an offensive operation. This appears to be a diplomatic approach. Diplomatic. Okonkwo shook his head. They killed billions of our people. They burned our cities. And now they want to talk? They stopped killing us when they could have finished the job, Elena reminded him. They've been waiting for a year, doing nothing. Something has changed. We need to find out what. The debate raged for hours as the eternal silence drew closer. Some demanded an attack. Others advocated for hiding. Most wanted to wait and see. In the end, the decision was taken out of their hands. When the flagship reached orbit around Earth, it sent a message. The words were simple. Translated by Prometheus 7 into every language spoken on the planet. We request a meeting. Send your representative to our vessel. We wish to discuss the future. The council selected Elena to go. She had spoken with the architects before. She understood them better than anyone else alive. And she had volunteered. You could die, Okonkwo told her, as she prepared to board the shuttle. I could have died 100 times in the past year. We all could have. But we're still here. She smiled. Besides, someone needs to find out what they want. Might as well be me. The shuttle crossed the void between Earth and the flagship. Elena watched through the window as the eternal silence grew larger, filling her view until it blocked out the stars. The ship was beyond massive. It was a world unto itself, a mountain of technology and power that made human achievements look like children's toys. But Elena wasn't afraid. She had faced the architects before. She had stood in their presence and spoken the truth about humanity. She would do it again. The shuttle docked. A portal opened. Elena walked into the alien vessel. The interior was different from the ship she had explored during the battle. This was the flagship, the heart of the Architect Collective. And it showed. The walls glowed with patterns that seemed to contain entire languages. The air hummed with energy that made Elena's skin tingle. Gravity shifted around her, guiding her deeper into the ship without any need for direction. She walked for what felt like hours, through corridors that twisted in ways that defied human understanding. Finally, she reached a chamber at the heart of the vessel. The chamber was vast, larger than any stadium on Earth, and it was filled with light. The light coalesced into a form, a shape that was almost humanoid but not quite. It towered above Elena, radiating power and age. This was the Architect Overmind, the collective consciousness that had guided the cultivation of life throughout the galaxy for billions of years. Elena Vasquez, the Overmind said. Its voice was like thunder and whisper combined, filling the chamber without seeming loud. You came. You invited me. Yes, we have been. Considering. Processing. Debating. In our fashion, Elena waited. The Overmind seemed to be gathering its thoughts, organizing concepts that had probably never been expressed before. We have existed for longer than your species can comprehend. We were old when your son was young. We have watched life rise and fall across the galaxy. We have guided it, shaped it, pruned it when necessary. Pruned it, Elena repeated. That's what you call killing billions of beings? We do not enjoy destruction. We do not take pleasure in extinction. But life is not precious simply because it exists. Life is precious when it serves a purpose, when it contributes to the greater pattern of the universe. And who decides what that pattern is? Who gives you the right to judge? We are the oldest, the first. We have seen what works and what fails. We have watched species rise to greatness and fall to chaos. We know what the universe needs. Do you? Elena stepped forward, her voice rising. Because from what I've seen, your grand plan has failed. Billions of years of cultivation, and you've never found your inheritors. Thousands of species, all judged and found wanting. Maybe the problem isn't them. Maybe the problem is you. The Overmind's light flickered, a sign of what might have been surprise or anger. You speak boldly for a creature whose species nearly died. We didn't die. That's the point. You threw everything you had at us, and we're still standing. Not because we were stronger or smarter, but because we refused to accept defeat. She walked around the chamber, her boots echoing on the alien floor. I've studied your records. Every species that answered your signal, every civilization that was harvested. They were brilliant. They were advanced. They had technologies we can barely understand. But they all had one thing in common. What? They accepted your authority. They saw your power and your age, and they assumed you must know best. They submitted because submission seemed logical. Elena stopped and faced the Overmind directly. We didn't submit. We fought. Not because we expected to win, but because fighting is who we are. We would rather die on our feet than live on our knees. And that made you pause. For the first time in billions of years, something made you stop and think. The Overmind was silent for a long moment. You are correct, it finally said. Your species has caused us to question assumptions we have held since the birth of stars. We sought perfect inheritors, beings who would continue our work without question. We eliminated species that showed flaws, that displayed chaos, that refused to follow the patterns we established. Its voice changed, became almost contemplative. But perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps perfection is not what the universe needs. Perhaps it needs exactly what you are. Chaotic, unpredictable, stubborn beyond all reason. Elena felt her heart beating faster. What are you saying? We have decided. Humanity will not be harvested. You have earned the right to exist. Relief washed over Elena, so intense she almost fell. But she forced herself to stay standing, to keep meeting the Overmind's gaze. What happens now? That depends on you. We offer you a choice. The light shifted, and images appeared in the air around Elena. Stars, planets, galaxies stretching across the void. You can remain here, in your small corner of the galaxy. We will leave you in peace. You can grow and develop at your own pace, without our interference. Eventually, you will spread to other stars, build your own empire, make your own mistakes. This is the first option. And the second? The second is more complicated. The images changed, showing the wreckage of worlds, the empty spaces where civilizations had once existed. We have been gardeners for too long. We have culled and pruned and shaped, and we have produced nothing but extinction. Our methods have failed. Our purpose has been unfulfilled. The Overmind's voice carried something that sounded almost like sadness. We are old. We are tired. And we have begun to wonder if our time has passed. Elena stared at the images. What are you asking? We ask if humanity would consider becoming not our inheritors, but our partners. Not subjects to be guided, but allies to work alongside. You see things we do not see. You value things we do not understand. Perhaps together, we could achieve what neither of us could alone. It was the last thing Elena had expected. The beings who had nearly destroyed humanity, who had killed billions of people across thousands of worlds, were offering partnership. Why us? After everything you've done, everything you've seen, why choose us? Because you are different. Because you fought when you should have surrendered. Because you hoped when you should have despaired. Because you are everything we are not. The Overmind moved closer, its light gentle now rather than overwhelming. We have spent billions of years trying to create the perfect species. We failed because perfection is impossible. Life is messy. Life is chaotic. Life is stubborn and irrational and beautiful precisely because it refuses to follow rules. You are the most alive species we have ever encountered. You are flawed and contradictory and self-destructive, but you are also brave and creative and kind. You deserve to exist. More than that, you deserve to thrive. Elena thought about everything humanity had been through. The fear when the signal was first discovered. The hope when contact seemed possible. The terror when the architects came. The courage of soldiers who fought knowing they would die. The determination of scientists who worked without sleep. the love of families who said goodbye without knowing if they would see each other again. Humanity had earned this moment. They had paid for it in blood and tears and sacrifice. "I can't make this decision alone," she said. "This affects all of humanity. It will change everything." "Of course. Take all the time you need. We have waited billions of years. We can wait a little longer." Elena nodded slowly. "One more question. The warning in your signal, the one that said not to answer, was that real? Would you really have destroyed us if we hadn't fought?" The Overmind's light flickered, something that might have been shame. "Yes. If you had answered with submission, you would have been harvested like all the others. The warning was meant to identify species wise enough to stay hidden. We thought obedience was a virtue. And now? Now we understand that obedience is just another form of extinction. The species that obeyed us are all gone. The species that defied us is still here." Elena smiled. "Then I'm glad we answered." She turned and walked back toward the shuttle, leaving the Overmind alone with its thoughts. She had a lot to tell the Council, a lot to explain to humanity, a lot to consider. But as she walked through the alien corridors, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real hope. Not the desperate hope of survival, but the genuine hope of a better future. Humanity had been tested. They had been found wanting by ancient standards of perfection, and they had responded by refusing to accept those standards. Now the gardeners of the galaxy were offering to become partners instead of judges. The universe was opening up, full of possibilities that humanity had never imagined. Elena reached the shuttle and climbed aboard. Through the window, she could see Earth, a blue and white marble against the blackness of space. Her home. Humanity's home. They had almost lost it. They had almost lost everything. But they hadn't. They had fought and hoped and refused to give up. And somehow, impossibly, they had won. Not won in the way they expected. Not through military victory or technological superiority. They had won by being human. By being stubborn and irrational and brave. By refusing to accept that the universe wasn't meant for them. The shuttle departed from the flagship and began the journey back to Earth. Behind her, the eternal silence hung in orbit, waiting for humanity's answer. Elena knew what that answer would be. Humanity would accept the partnership, not because they trusted the architects, but because it was the next great adventure, the next horizon to cross, the next challenge to face. That was who they were. Explorers, dreamers, fighters. The species that answered signals meant for someone else. The species that talked back to gods. She activated her communicator and sent a message to Prometheus 7. "Tell the Council we have a lot to discuss. And tell them," she paused, looking at the stars. "Tell them we did it. We actually did it." On Earth, the message was received. In command centers and homes, in hospitals and shelters, in the ruins of cities and the fields of Mars, people heard the news. The architects were not leaving, but they were not destroying either. They were offering something new, something unprecedented, a chance for humanity to join them as equals in the vast work of nurturing life across the galaxy. Commander Okonkwo read the message and laughed, the first real laugh he had allowed himself in over a year. "We told them to go to hell, and they asked us to be their partners. That's the most human thing I've ever heard." On Mars, Colonel Reyes gathered her soldiers and raised a toast to the fallen. "They died so we could have this moment. Let's make sure we deserve it." In research facilities around the world, scientists began planning for a future they had never expected to see. New technologies to develop, new worlds to explore, new species to meet. And in the space between Earth and the flagship, Elena Vasquez's shuttle flew home. She was tired. She was old. She had seen too much death and suffered too much loss. But she was also proud. Proud of humanity. Proud of what they had achieved. They had answered a signal meant for someone else. They had defied beings who had ruled the galaxy for billions of years. They had fought against impossible odds and won through sheer stubborn refusal to die. And now the universe was theirs to explore. The stars didn't seem cold anymore. They seemed like destinations, like invitations, like the next chapter in humanity's story. Elena closed her eyes and smiled. "We're not the inheritors," she whispered to herself. "We're something better. We're human." And somewhere, across the vast reaches of space, the architects watched and waited. They had cultivated life for billions of years. They had sought perfection and found only extinction. Now, they had found something different, something chaotic and unpredictable and alive. They had found humanity, and for the first time in longer than memory could reach, they were curious to see what would happen next. The story was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning, but that was a story for another time. For now, humanity celebrated. They mourned their dead. They healed their wounds. They looked up at the stars and knew that they had earned their place among them. They had been warned. They had answered anyway. And against all odds, against all logic, against the judgment of the oldest beings in the universe, they had survived. They were humanity, and they were just getting started.